Hello mate, and welcome back. This video I'm doing more icons. I'm going to be working on I'm thinking something in the bookcase. No, that's the wrong thing, that's why. Looking for kind of a bookcase motif. So I'm kind of going to stick with colours from this palette. It's like base colours. I'm not going to stick with a true pixel art rule for my overall all the icons I create, in as much as I'm not going to stick to these 32 colors, but I am going to, you know, kind of use them as my jumping off point. So this is going to be a bookcase, hopefully. So it's this one square is 1 meter, so this is going to be a just below 2 meters high bookcase. Got to leave a little bit of space at the bottom for shadowing and whatnot, and then a little bit of space at the top is going to be used for highlight. So that's going to be my highlight color. Now I need to pick a darker color, shifting towards this way, or the front face. I think that's not quite right. I think maybe I need to come. That's a bit too much. Let's have a look and see how that looks. It's going to be, I don't know, fairly. I think I've got a bit too far in the saturation. I think that's my problem. Somewhere around about there, perhaps. That looks a bit better. So that's going to be the face, and then inside the bookshelf we need some actual shelves. This is going to be the bit that's tricky, because we've only got 32 pixels to play with. We have to be really clever about how we actually achieve this effect, and also I haven't done my outline yet, so let's pick that color, come down, way down there, and then we'll just go with something like that. And then pick this color and then do largely the same thing. Now I'll just draw this bit in. Oops, a daisy, oops. I'm going to get rid of that bit because there's ground contact there. And then this bit, I come way down there, up a bit there. And within it, if I can manage drawing a straight line today, that's going to be the highlight there. So let's have a look. Do I want this object to have shaved off corners? I'll think about that in a bit. Right. So because there's going to be multiple lips, I'm going to pick this color. And I think I'm going to do a bookshelf with 4 shelves. So the first one has to be quite low down. So I'm going to go with maybe there. And then the halfway point is kind of there. Which means the next shelf needs to be about there, and the shelf above it needs to be about there. Marvelous. And then rather than doing like a really noticeable thing like I've done previously, I'm going to do really subtle highlights. So that's the basics of the highlight, and then come back in there a little bit more with a little bit brighter, but barely noticeable. So, and then we can just bring that up and have a look, and then yeah, that looks okay. Right, so now this is our horizontal color, so I may need to brighten this up a little bit more. In fact, let's do that now before I forget. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go with maximum brightness, but I'm only going to get like 10% alpha, and I'm just going to, no, not there. I'm just going to run my brush across there to brighten that layer up. I think that's way too much still, so come right back down on the alpha. That's better. So I'm trying to keep this subtle because obviously the color that goes into the shelf, the horizontal bit, is going to start off as this color. So I can use my fill tool here, and now do I want to brighten it? Yeah, well, because we basically, because it's a top-down game, we can only see one layer of the back there. So I'm actually going to do this instead. That's the actual front of the thing, so we don't need to get rid of that color at all. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this. I'm going to darken it up a little bit. Then I'm going to come back on my alpha to whatever level that is. And I'm going to drop a layer of it over there, a layer of it over there, and then a layer over there, which gives us kind of a gradient. And maybe I need to come up on my alpha a little bit more. I think that's a little bit too subtle now. Is that enough? Is that enough? That is the question. No. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to come right down to black, and I'm going to come up a little bit more on my alpha, and I'm actually going to go with the whole thing there. See how that looks. Yeah, that looks okay. That looks okay. We've got to remind ourselves that this is a sort of stack of. This is going to be empty shelves, and then what I might do in another video is actually add books to it and make this a separate icon. So this at the moment looks a bit kind of dull at the bottom. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to add a layer of shadow directly under this lip here, just to make that look like it's tucked in. And I think that color just looks too saturated compared to this brown, so I'm actually going to revisit that color. I think that looks a little bit more appropriate as a shadow, but again, I think there does need to be some hue shift, that's for sure. But I think I just went too mad on the, yeah, that looks much better. Contrast is important, obviously, but there is a limit. Oops. Okay, so there's the basic outline of our bookshelf. I'm just looking at them and seeing, do they look uneven for some reason? No, I think when we get to it, it'll be fine. So let's just see what happens if I remove the corners, just the corners. Does that add a little bit of a dimension to it? I think when we removed the top it did, but I think removing the bottom just made it look like it had a step at the bottom. So what I'll do instead is I'll grab my pen tool, come right down and right down there, and then draw a highlight under there, contact shadow, like so. And what I think I need to do as well is darken up the corners of the shelf to give the feeling of depth. So I'm going to keep with my tool that I have here, and I'm just going to draw a line going up. Oh, I might have bled over into the side there, so we're just being very careful. Oh, gone too far again. And this should help the person viewing this to see that these are actually the sides of something. And then perhaps if I go over that one more time and then introduce another, yeah, that looks better. So one more there, one there. See, if I was sticking to a 32 colour palette, I would already have broken that rule just by doing that, because as you can see, I've introduced a whole bunch of new colours there. So we've got that. Now I know that we've added a little bit of shadow onto this layer here. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to just pull back, and this really is very subtle. In fact, you can see that for some reason on these two shelves, that might be why it looked a bit weird. Okay, so what I'm going to do, rather than faffing around, I'm going to copy this one. And this just makes sure that all of my shelves are identical in their appearance. Like that. Now I can add my little highlight in the front here. In fact, I think I might even need to come back on that a little bit. Let's just go with, that's a bit too subtle. That's better. So I'm just going to add a couple of slightly brighter pixels in the middle there, just to indicate that that's kind of the closest to being exposed to the light. So there you go. Now it's starting to look a little bit more uniform. And what I'd like to do is actually extend this shadow in there to make it look like that front panel is actually recessed a little bit into the shelf, so that the sides are actually casting a shadow on it as well. But overall, I think that looks pretty good. That's quite an effective little bookshelf. As I said, it's only 1 meter wide and just under 2 meters high, where it's more like 1.5 meters once you take into account the Z dimension as well. But I'm pretty happy with that. So hopefully you enjoyed that. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next one. But until then, you take damn good care of yourselves, alright? Bye bye.